I found messages between my girlfriend and her AP. I spent months planning my exit. I moved all her stuff out and only left her a note. Hey, Hajichi. Long-time reader, first-time poster here. I've spent years lurking on this sub, reading story after story, never once thinking I'd have my own to tell. But here I am. Honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything. Maybe I'm looking for some perspective, maybe for a bit of validation, or maybe I just need a place to unload. This is going to be a long one. So, I'm 35 now, and for the longest time, I was starting to believe that finding a genuine, honest woman was as rare as spotting a unicorn. People talk about them, but no one ever seems to actually see one. Just to be clear, I'm not one of those guys who whines about being friend-zoned or acts like being nice entitles me to something. I'm a straightforward, no BS kind of guy. I work in construction, I'm good at what I do, and I make a solid living. But when it came to relationships, no matter how much effort I put in, it always felt like it wasn't enough. I was the guy who never forgot anniversaries, who brought flowers just because, who really listened when she talked. I tried to be the kind of partner who was supportive and understanding. The whole deal. And yet, every relationship seemed to end the same way, with me getting hurt. After a while, I started wondering if being a decent, caring person even mattered anymore. It felt less like an asset and more like a weakness. I was growing cynical, convinced that the qualities I thought made someone a good partner just weren't valued anymore. I wasn't even looking for a relationship at that point. And then, 5 years ago, I met Jessica. She was 33 at the time. It wasn't some dramatic, storybook moment or anything like that. We met at a casual get-together through a mutual acquaintance. Simple, unremarkable. But I still remember the first thing that drew me to her smile. It wasn't forced, it wasn't fake. It was the kind of genuine smile that instantly puts you at ease. We ended up talking for most of the night, exchanged numbers, and started dating a few months later. Those early days were electric. We couldn't wait to see each other. I made sure to put in effort, plan dates, paid attention to the little things, made her feel special. I can still recall certain days so vividly, even down to the clothes we were wearing. At first, I figured it was just something casual, nothing serious. But over time, I started catching real feelings. And for the first time in a long time, I thought, maybe this was it. Maybe I'd finally found someone different. Jessica and I had a lot in common. We both loved hiking, trying out new restaurants, and exploring new places. At the same time, we had our own separate interests, which I always thought was a sign of a healthy relationship. I've always been into classic cars, restoring them, going to car shows, that kind of thing. She wasn't super into it, but she found it interesting enough. On the flip side, she loved pottery, making bowls, vases, all sorts of stuff. I respected her craft, even though I didn't have the patience for myself. It gave us things to talk about, things to learn from each other. Those early days felt effortless. We were still figuring things out, but we were doing it together. It felt solid, like we were actually building something meaningful. We were making plans, talking about the future, dreaming about what was next. Everything just worked. Now, our jobs were pretty different, and that would end up playing a big role in what happened later. Like I said, I'm in construction, which means I spend most of my time on site. I've been working physically most days, and while it's tough, it's honest work. I take pride in what I do. Jessica, on the other hand, worked in sales, selling software, and her success was measured by how much she sold. At first, she worked in an office, one of those typical 9 to 5 jobs, but after some time, her company offered a work-from-home option, which she jumped at. I thought it was great at first. More flexibility for her meant more potential time we could spend together, even if it was just sharing the same house while she worked. I was always proud of her, encouraging her to push for that promotion, believing that we were headed for bigger and better things. Now, I'm going to be honest. I've always thought of myself as a good partner. Not to brag, but I do my best to be attentive, to provide, to protect, and to be there for my partner in every way I can. That includes offering emotional support, being spontaneous, and yes, making sure things are good in the bedroom. I put effort into our relationship. With Jessica, I felt like I could truly trust her. In the past, I'd been with partners where I had these nagging doubts, little things that made me wonder if they were being entirely honest. But with Jessica, it was different. I'm not saying infidelity is impossible, but I never actively worried about it with her. I genuinely believed we had something special, something rooted in trust and respect. That's why what happened later knocked me off my feet. It started off slow. Jessica began acting strangely. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what, but she just wasn't herself. I noticed she was becoming more secretive with her phone, hiding the screen when I walked by, taking calls in another room. She wasn't as affectionate, less interested in spending time with me. She kept saying she was tired, even on weekends when we normally make plans. At first, I brushed it off. I figured she was just stressed from work. She'd been gunning for a promotion, and I knew the pressure was starting to get to her. I kept telling myself, don't jump to conclusions, it's probably nothing. I really wanted to believe it was nothing. I didn't want to think it was something serious. My first reaction was just curiosity. I want to figure out what was going on with her, why she seemed so distant. At that point, I was completely blind to the bigger picture, but her odd behavior didn't stop. It lasted for a whole week, with only a few glimpses of the Jessica I knew. Those small moments of normalcy were just enough to keep me hanging on, making me think maybe I was overreacting. But the suspicion kept growing. Even then, I didn't immediately jump to the conclusion that she was cheating. I thought maybe she was going through some personal crisis, or perhaps hiding a health issue or something like that. Then one night, we were watching a movie, something we always did on Saturday nights, and she seemed completely distracted, constantly checking her phone. When I asked her about it, she said it was work emails. On a Saturday night. That was unusual, even for her. That's when I really started to get concerned. My worries started building. I ended up talking to my friend, James, about it. James is a good guy, but he's pretty cynical, especially when it comes to relationships. He had gone through a messy divorce a few years ago, and that definitely colored how he saw things. I confided in him about what was going on, and he just laughed. He said, and I'll never forget this, dude, if she's a woman, she can cheat on you. It doesn't matter how good you are, how much you do for her, they all have it in them. He even mentioned that you could have everything, a great job, great looks, but you'd never really be sure. That statement, as harsh as it was, really struck me. It changed my entire perspective. Suddenly, every little thing Jessica did seemed suspicious. I went from being concerned and curious to actively suspecting that she was having an affair. I couldn't shake James's words from my mind. I decided I couldn't live with this nagging doubt anymore, that constant feeling that something wasn't right. I had to find out what was really going on. I knew about Reddit, and the advice I'd read online suggested checking the phone, so I figured that's the route I'd take if things didn't improve. I decided to plan a nice dinner. I cooked her favorite lasagna, the one we used to make together when things were good. I even set the table with candles, trying to create a relaxed, intimate atmosphere that I wanted her to feel safe, to feel like she could talk to me without hesitation. So I tried to create a comfortable atmosphere. After waiting for her to get home, we had dinner, and then I brought it up. I told her I was worried because she'd been acting differently, and I just needed to understand what was going on. Then, without beating around the bush, I asked her straight out, "Are you cheating on me?" Her reaction was instant, shock. Her hands started to tremble, and she couldn't even look me in the eye. She fumbled for words, clearly struggling to say anything, and it was honestly painful to watch. Eventually, she denied everything. She said she couldn't believe I'd ask her such a thing, that she loved me, and that we'd been together for 5 years. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she became almost hysterical. It felt like a whole performance, honestly. But here's the thing, I didn't believe her. Maybe it was James's words echoing in my mind, or maybe it was my gut telling me something was off, but I knew something wasn't right. I thought she'd get angry, maybe even outraged that I would accuse her, but she didn't. Instead, she seemed deflated, like she was just sad that I would think such a thing. And when I apologized for accusing her, she accepted it way too quickly. It didn't sit right with me. I did something I'm not proud of, but I felt like I had no choice. I pretended to buy into her story. I apologized again, claiming I was just being paranoid, and then we went to bed. But I couldn't sleep. This wasn't just about peace of mind. It was a calculated move. If I wanted to find out what was really going on, I needed her to believe that I trusted her again. I needed her to let her guard down. I knew exactly what I had to do, but I had to wait for the right moment. It was going to be a long night. This was all building up to the one thing I knew I had to do. I couldn't rest until I had the truth. I told myself, if she thinks I'm this stupid, she's got another thing coming. The tension inside me was growing. I had to wait until I was sure Jessica was sound asleep, and at 3:17 a.m., according to my phone, I knew the time had come. I'd been staring at the ceiling for hours, my heart racing, feeling sick to my stomach. But there was no turning back now. Quietly, I slipped out of bed, grabbed her phone from the nightstand, and went into the bathroom. I opened her messages, scrolling through them, hoping to find something. At first, I found nothing in her gallery, but when I opened her messages, I saw it. A contact labeled Harry's Plumbing. Why would Jessica be texting a plumber at this hour? It didn't add up. I knew right away it was a fake name, a cover. It was almost laughable how obvious it was. So childish. I clicked on the conversation, and everything fell apart. The messages were from someone named Ethan, and they were full of pet names, dirty talk, and even some almost nude pictures. There were messages like, "Can't stop thinking about your smile," and others, complete with a winking emoji from Ethan. Jessica's responses were no better. One even said, "You're making it hard to focus on work, you know." There was a picture of Jessica in new lingerie she'd bought, with a message, "Wish you were here to take this off me." Everything was there, right in front of me. While they hadn't explicitly said they'd slept together, the emotional intimacy, the suggestive talk, it was all there. It was an affair, plain and simple. And it had been going on for at least 2 weeks, which perfectly matched when she started acting strange. I sat there on the bathroom floor, reading the messages, and I could feel a panic attack coming on. My heart was pounding in my chest. I couldn't breathe properly. My hand was shaking so badly, I could barely hold the phone. I wanted to scream, to break something, to wake her up and confront her right then and there. I even thought about tracking down this Ethan guy, but I'll spare you the details. Let's just say they weren't pretty thoughts. I was heartbroken, devastated, furious, all at once. 5 years. 5 years I'd invested in this relationship, and it was all a lie. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? Was any of it real? Did she ever even love me? It was as if my entire reality had been shattered. In some strange way, I felt relieved that I'd found out early, before we got married or had kids, but I was also furious. The childish code names, the stupid emojis, it was all so immature. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality, like I was losing control. I knew I had to get out. I couldn't sit still anymore. I had to get some air and figure out what to do next. The weight of everything was crushing me, but I had to keep moving forward. I spent the next hour documenting everything, taking screenshots, making notes, ensuring I had everything recorded. It was meticulous, but I couldn't afford to leave anything to chance. Once I had all the evidence in my hands, I started thinking through my options. I sat down on the bathroom floor, leaning against the wall, trying to calm myself enough to think. There were so many thoughts running through my head, and the anger was still boiling inside me. I was considering the loud, public options, telling everyone, making it a spectacle, maybe telling our families, posting everything online for everyone to see, or even handing out flyers at her workplace. It would make her feel what I was feeling. But then there were the quieter options. I could just leave without a word, contact a lawyer, or simply move out. But I wanted her to understand the gravity of what she'd done. I realized I had leverage in this situation. I was financially stable, part of a union, with all the security that comes with it. Jessica, on the other hand, was barely getting by. She was struggling in sales, barely scraping by. Without me, she would have a hard time surviving in the expensive city we lived in. That was a power I could use, a way to make her feel the weight of her actions. The thought that I could get by just fine without her gave me some peace. I didn't need her. I had been doing everything for us. This was my chance to get out, to start over. So here I am, Reddit. A mess. Hurt. Angry. Trying to figure out my next move. I know I need to end things, but I'm still unsure how. Update 1. It's been a few months since my last post, and I know many of you have been waiting for an update. I apologize for the delay. I needed some time to get my head straight and make sure I was making the right decisions. I wanted to ensure this would be a clean break, not something done in the heat of the moment. The first few weeks after I found out about the affair were pure hell. I was cold and distant to Jessica. We were sleeping in separate rooms, barely talking. When we did speak, it was with clipped sentences, and I couldn't even look at her without feeling disgust. I barely ate. I was so consumed with anger and betrayal. But the one thing I did realize during that time, and I want to share with all of you, is how important it is not to rush in a marriage. I'm so thankful Jessica and I weren't married yet. I dodged a bullet there. It really shows that you never know someone completely until you've lived with them for a while, seen them at their best and worst. I know that now firsthand. I decided to wait until our lease was up in about 3 months. It was in my name, and I figured that would be the best time to make my move. It would give me time to plan, to get everything in order, and to maximize the impact of my actions. I needed to find a new apartment that fit my budget and was closer to work. I also had to start gathering boxes and reach out to friends for help with the move. It was a lot to do, but I had a plan. And then one more thing. About a month after I checked her phone, I found out that Jessica and Ethan had indeed slept together. Honestly, it made things easier for me. It removed any lingering doubt or temptation to try and work things out. It was the final nail in the coffin. I've heard that cheaters often lose interest once the forbidden aspect of the affair is gone. I think that's what will happen with Jessica and Ethan. It's just a fantasy built on lies. But that's their problem, not mine. I'm moving on. I was starting to feel like I was getting things together. The plan was ready, and it was time to act. The final month of the lease had rolled around, and it was go time. I had been planning this for months, and I was ready. I picked a day when I knew Jessica was supposed to be working late. She had some big client dinner or something. Honestly, I didn't even care if it was true or not anymore. It gave me the opportunity one needed. I'd already lined up my friends, the same ones who knew the whole story, including James. They were all more than willing to help. They had been telling me for weeks that I deserved better, that I needed to move on, and that they'd be there for me no matter what. Good guys. I'm lucky to have them. Their support made me feel a lot better about my actions. We met up at the apartment early in the afternoon. I had already packed most of my stuff into boxes, labeling them so I knew what was what. We worked fast efficiently. These guys were like a well-oiled machine. We loaded up the truck with everything that belonged to me, which, honestly, was about 80% of the stuff in the apartment. Furniture, electronics, kitchenware, my clothes, my tools. I wanted to leave her with as little as possible. I wanted her to feel the emptiness, the void I had been living with for months. The new apartment was actually closer to my work, which was a bonus. It was smaller, but it was clean, and it was mine a fresh start. We got everything moved in about 4 hours. It was surprisingly quick considering how much stuff I had. I remember looking around the apartment before we left. It was almost completely bare, empty shelves, bare walls, just a few pieces of furniture that Jessica had brought into the relationship. It looked sad, and honestly, it felt good. A strange mix of sadness and anger was building inside me, knowing that I was actually doing this. But there was also a sense of liberation. I was finally free. Before I left, I did one last thing. I took a piece of paper and wrote a short, simple note. Goodbye. Have fun with Ethan. I debated for a while about what to write, if anything. I thought about writing a long, angry letter, pouring out all my hurt and frustration. But in the end, I decided less was more. This was the best message, short and to the point. I placed the note on the kitchen counter right where she'd see it when she walked in. I know it's a bit cliche, but it felt right. I even considered writing something more snarky, but I decided against it. This was enough. My friends helped me unpack a few of the essentials at the new place, but I told them I could handle the rest. I needed some time alone to process everything, to get used to my new surroundings. I thanked them again for their help, and they left. I was so grateful to have them. Then came the hard part, the ghosting. As soon as Jessica got home and found the note, my phone started blowing up, calls, texts, messages on every social media platform you can imagine. She was panicking, obviously. She went from angry accusations to tearful pleas for forgiveness, all in the span of a few hours. She even tried to contact me through mutual friends, begging them to intervene. But I didn't respond. Not once. I ignored every call, every message, every attempt to contact me. This was the core of my revenge, if you can even call it that, complete and utter silence. I wanted her to feel the same confusion, the same uncertainty, the same helplessness that I had felt when I discovered her affair. It's been 3 weeks since I moved out, and I haven't spoken a single word to her. I'm actually enjoying imagining her panic. I'm sure she's freaking out. Update 2. A few days after I moved out, I got a call from the landlord. He was obviously confused, wondering what was going on. Jessica must have told him some story, but he wanted to hear my side of it. He contacted me on my cell. I told him the truth. I explained everything about the affair, about Ethan, and how I moved out because I couldn't live with a cheater. I told him I wouldn't be renewing the lease. Obviously, the landlord was surprisingly understanding. He'd known me for a few years, and I'd always been a good tenant, paid my rent on time, never caused any problems. I think he appreciated my honesty. I also told him that I was forfeiting the security deposit. I didn't want a single penny back. I didn't want Jessica to benefit in any way from my money. I told the landlord to do a thorough walkthrough of the apartment and make his own judgment about whether she deserved any of it back. I trusted him to be fair. I had his word that he would make the right choice. Then the landlord told me something that gave me a strange sense of satisfaction. He said that Jessica couldn't afford the apartment on her own. She didn't have a roommate lined up, and her family lived too far away to be of any help. She was facing eviction and scrambling to find a new place to live. It was a direct consequence of her actions, of her betrayal, and I'm not going to lie, it felt good to know that. I know some people might think I'm being cruel, that I should feel sorry for Jessica, but honestly, I don't. I gave her everything I had. I was a good partner. I was faithful. I was supportive. And she threw it all away for some cheap thrill. She made her choices, and now she has to live with the consequences. It's not about the money or the apartment or even the stuff I took. It's about the principle of the thing. It's about the pain she caused me, the disrespect she showed me. It's about the fact that you can't just treat people like garbage and expect to get away with it. You can't have the best of both worlds. You can't have a loving, committed partner and a secret affair on the side. The landlord did the walkthrough. He contacted me and told me that everything was good and that he would be returning my security deposit. I was glad, and he told me he served the eviction notice to Jessica. He was very happy with how I handled everything. I thanked him again and told him I was happy to finally be moving on. Also, people told me to block her and move on, so that's exactly what I did. Update 3. It has been a month since the last update, and Jessica has tried again to reach me. After I blocked her, she called me on a blocked number. It went straight to voicemail. I checked it, and I instantly knew it was her. I called the number back. Jessica answered, and she immediately broke down. She was crying, apologizing profusely, saying she had nowhere to go. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying for days. She sounded exhausted, defeated. It was obvious she realized she couldn't deny the affair any longer. The jig was up. She kept repeating, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," over and over again. She tried to offer explanations, excuses, but they were weak, unconvincing. "It just happened," she said. "I didn't mean for it to." I wasn't buying it. It was pathetic, really. She even tried to appeal to my past feelings, reminding me of all the good times we'd shared. "Don't you still care about me at all?" she asked, her voice cracking. She was desperate, grasping at straws, trying anything to get me to change my mind. She started to express how uncertain she was about her future. She didn't know what she was going to do, and stated she had nowhere to go. I listened to her pleas for a few moments. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, the full impact of what she'd done. Then I let out a short, humorless laugh. It was a sharp, dismissive sound, the kind of laugh that conveys disbelief and contempt. "You know, Jessica," I said, "it's funny. You spent weeks, maybe months, sneaking around, lying to my face, and now you expect me to feel sorry for you." I paused again, letting my words sink in. "You made your choices. You destroyed what we had, and now you're reaping the consequences." I delivered the final decisive blow. You have Ethan, I said, my voice flat and emotionless. Go. Go live with him. And then I hung up. I didn't give her a chance to respond, to argue, to plead. I just ended the call abruptly, mid-sentence. If she even tried, there was no going back. Right after I hung up, I went through all my social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, everything, and blocked her there too. I erased her digital presence from my life as thoroughly as I'd erased her physical presence from my apartment. I even considered deleting old photos and messages, but I decided to keep them for now as a reminder of what I'd been through and what I'd overcome. I sat back, and a strange calm washed over me. I didn't feel a rush of elation or a surge of triumph, just a quiet, steady sense of closure. It was like a weight had been lifted, a burden I'd been carrying for months finally released. I started thinking to myself, justifying my actions, not to anyone else but to myself. I don't know where she'll go, I thought, and honestly, I don't care. She made her bed. She can lie in it. I strengthened my belief that she deserved whatever hardship came her way. I didn't see it as an act of revenge, but as a natural consequence of her choices. She had betrayed me, lied to me, and destroyed our relationship. She had to face the reality of that, without me to cushion the blow. I knew the pain I'd gone through, the sleepless nights, the constant anxiety, the feeling of being utterly worthless. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but I also wouldn't shield Jessica from the consequences of her actions. If she ends up on the streets, she deserves it. That was my final thought on the matter, a testament to my complete lack of empathy for her.